Hey everyone. Yeah, I just got off work about 7 minutes ago, and I got 15, 14 minutes before the bus arrives to drive me home. Or at least one of the buses. Basically, I transfer from one bus to another when I ride this route. And when I ride the later routes, which are like 6:47 at night, then I don't have to worry about that. But I wanted to come on here and I wanted to talk about something. As you probably all know, I'm a fan of what's known as the melting gag. More specifically, the lustful melt portion of the melting gag. And in case any of you don't know what that is, basically it's where a character melts into a puddle of goo. Sometimes, as far as the lustful melt portion goes, it's when a female character or even a male character gets so, amored, basically attracted to another male or female character that they melt into a puddle of goo. Sometimes they melt completely, and you see nothing but maybe the face on top of the puddle. Sometimes they melt to a point that, well, in the case of a character like Minerva Meek, they melt down into a puddle, and another character has to pick them up and wring them out like a wet towel just to restore them. And sometimes there's the immutable melting, the immutable lustful melt, if you immutable melt, if you will. It's kind of like the lustful melt, but basically, it's more along the lines a character will melt into a puddle at the admiration of seeing some other characters they look up to. Case in point, Babs Bunny in Tiny Toon Adventures episode Europe in 30 Minutes. She ended up melting into a puddle after seeing the characteries or parodies, if you will, Princess Diana and Prince Charles, or the characters, if you will, Princess Diana and Prince Charles. But as much as I'm a fan of it, there's always something that's related to it in some ways. You see, sometimes a female character or even a male character, doesn't have to melt into a puddle of goo because, the scene calls for it, if you will. They don't have to do that. Instead, they could end up melting into a puddle of goo because they have the power to do so. That's right. Basically, what I want to kind of talk about is, have you ever wondered? I know not a lot of people are fans of the lustful melt or the melting gag or stuff like that. I understand that. But has anybody ever wondered where the idea sprang from to have a character, and no offense at all when I say this, but also have mostly have a female character, be given the powers of liquid, goo, slime, whatever, and be able to, if just for a one-time occurrence, maybe for one episode or a two-part episode, or maybe a temporary deal where it lasts for, like, let's say, and I apologize for that, but like I said, what I'm trying to say is, have you ever wondered where it all began? Who came up with the idea to, and again, I don't mean this to be offensive or anything like this. I'm not being offensive or anything like that. But has anybody ever wondered who came up with the idea to take a character, in this case mostly a female character, and give her the power of liquid? In other words, make her or give her the powers of liquid, like give her the powers of water, or give her the powers of slime, goo, whatever. Have you ever wondered who came up with that originally, to give a character, and again, no offense when I say this, mostly a female character, this power? Because it always struck me that, yes, we've had the male equivalent of it. We've had male characters, have this, have the power. There's no doubt about that. We've had male characters have the power as well, so I'm not trying to say they never had. But why is it every time a series is made, a story has to be told, why is it every time like I say, a story has to be told in a series, whether it's a comic book series, an adaptation of a comic book series, an all new original live action or animated series? Why is it that a female character, even if it's for one time, even for like I said, like for that one episode, why is it a female character always gets these powers? And the question I have is, who came up with it? I'm sure some of you will say, well, it had to be someone in the comic book industry that came up with the idea originally. And that might be true. But even if that is the case, even if somebody answers in the comment sections and says, yeah, this person created the character to have those powers. Even if somebody in the comment section gives us a question, you gotta wonder where they got the idea. How did they get the idea? And my theory on this, ladies and gentlemen, goes back to the first ever lustful milk gag. Yeah, I know that sounds crazy, but it goes back to then. It goes back to some of the very early indications of the lustful milk gag. For example, Swooner Crooner, as far as TV tropes is concerned, and even I'm concerned and several others are concerned, was the earliest indication of this happening. The earliest indication. It was the earliest indication of it happening when you had one of Porky's chickens, hens if you will, melt into a puddle of goo, a wavery, ripply puddle of goo, if you will, because she was swooned by a Frank Sinatra-like rooster. So with that said, people could point to some of the gag occurring. Could be, that is. And not just the gag happening, but the lustful milk gag happening, but also could be one of the early indications of early inspirations of a character, or early inspirations for giving a character, and again, no offense by this, mostly a female character, the powers to become liquid, goo, slime, and be able to shapeshift the body into anything or anyone, and be able to melt down into a puddle if they want to, and those could be the early inspirations. And again, though, even if those were the early inspirations, one has to wonder who came up with the idea to finally do it, to finally give that power to a character. Because nowadays, you see fan fiction stories like what Prender does, and Sarah Alexia does, and Great Bethania does, and Try Grey Wolf does, and many others, and even somebody I discovered recently called Xenial Liquid or XL. You gotta wonder who came up with the first original idea to do that sprung a lot of these fan fiction stories. Heck, it's even sprung it into media itself. Heck, we have an upcoming Russian superhero movie that may cross over here to the U.S. Yeah, a Russian superhero movie that may cross over here to the U.S. Well, one of the main characters, the female heroine, the female member of the team, because these guys are a team, I guess. She has the power of water. She could turn herself into liquid, merge with other water, stuff like that. Maybe even melt into a puddle. So The question is, who came up with the first original concept of going in that direction, of giving a character, male and mostly, and again, no offense, mostly female character, these powers? Because nowadays, you take a look at how they're interpreted at times. I mean, heck, you have recently in Ultimate Spider-Man, in the final season of Ultimate Spider-Man, you had the Carnage symbiote basically inhabit Mary Jane, basically absorb Mary Jane and make her into the Carnage Queen. And she was able to shapeshift her body into larger, small size. I guess have little Carnage babies that she created herself. I don't know. Be able to merge with a Carnage hive and let loose a lot of Carnage symbiont on New York. And now, because of a result of that, not only was she cured or saved from being Carnage Queen, but now, thanks to Dr. Kurt Connors in this universe, she's able to use. She's basically her body's become basically goo. Her body has basically become a hybrid of flesh and blood and symbiont goo, because now she doesn't even. Mary Jane in the Ultimate Spider-Man cartoon doesn't even have to have this symbiont on or covering her, because she can shapeshift her body at will without the symbiont. So it makes you wonder exactly where the origins, for this, for stuff like that to be inspired came from. You gotta wonder who first came up with the idea, because it even enthralls me a little bit. It even intrigues me a little bit, because like I said, I'm a fan of the lustful melt gang. I'm a fan of, girls having the power of liquid to melt down and shapeshift and all that. But you wonder exactly who came up with the idea, because we got characters like Ink from Batman Beyond that was obviously inspired and created by some kind of original idea that started years ago. We got characters like that. Heck, we had a character who I guess just had, for a temporary time, even though it was a long temporary time, had the power of turning into being made of water. So I ask you, and that was in Static Shock, so I ask you, who came up with the idea? That's what I would like to know. Wouldn't you? So let me know what you guys think down below. And I'll talk to you all later. But tell me, do you think the Lustful Melt Gag, or the Melting Gag period, helped inspire it? And who do you think came up with it? And when did you first see it? I'll talk to you all later.